Welcome to another episode of the Edmonds Moms Room podcast. I'm Dr. Allison Felt, owner of Body Motion Physical Therapy, and I am so delighted today to have Kat Williams from PROnatal Support. Welcome, Kat.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So Kat joins us as a fitness expert, teaches exercise classes. You're a birth doula, postpartum doula, and you also have some online courses. Is that correct?
Yeah. You're right. I'm also a Lamaze certified childbirth educator.
Oh, lovely. Okay. You wear a lot of hats.
I wear a lot of hats.
So I've only heard amazing things about you from my patients, and I am excited to get to know you and find out more about you. So I know that originally, did you just move here recently to Washington?
I moved here about 2.5 years ago. Yeah.
Okay. From the New York area?
Yes.
Okay.
I lived in New York for 9 years prior to moving here. Quite a big change.
Yeah. Is it creepy that I know that about you?
No.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about your business, maybe what you're doing here that you weren't doing in New York, or how'd you get started?
Yeah. So I originally was a dancer. I went to Juilliard for dance, and in school, I was pretty injured. And then after I left school, I was pretty injured. And so I danced professionally for about 2 years, and my injury just sort of won at that point. So I decided to step away from dance, and I started doing Pilates as a way to help my body recover. And then I was like, well, I'm not dancing for a career, so let me follow this Pilates thing that sort of pulled me in its direction. So I got certified as a Pilates instructor, and I was teaching in New York for probably 4 years. And I kept getting clients who were postpartum and experiencing all sorts of kind of typical postpartum issues that I just kept having this feeling like, there's this information that if you just had previously, maybe we could have prevented these injuries postpartum. So I was really getting into birth and just how the body changes during that period. And I decided I wanted to be a doula, and I knew I wanted to leave New York. And I heard about the doula training at Bastyr. So I was like, okay, here we go. So I moved across the country by myself, and I sort of went boom, boom, boom. I took a birth doula training. I took a childbirth educator training, and then I took a postpartum doula training. And so I've sort of fused those things together into this business where I am a birth doula and a postpartum doula, but then, as you spoke about, I offer one-on-one personal training, kind of with my Pilates background, but with a lot of other physical knowledge that I have, and sort of other modalities that I've dipped my toes into. And then I also have online prenatal movement classes. So that was definitely something that bloomed out of COVID. I couldn't teach classes anymore. I was teaching at a local Pilates studio, and that sort of wasn't a thing anymore. And so now I teach these classes exactly like you and I are here talking, and I'm in my little studio. And so for the 2 classes that I teach right now, they both meet twice a week, and they're an hour long, and I can't help but sort of sprinkle my childbirth education info into class. So we definitely move a lot, but there's a lot of explanation of why we're doing what we're doing in class. So it's never just an exercise class for the point of, quote, exercising. It's trying to maybe develop healthier movement patterns or prepare the upper body for the load that's required to, or the strength that's required to take on the load of taking care of a baby. So I try in those classes to tell everybody why we're doing what we're doing, rather than just, it's not some like boot camp thing where I'm screaming at everybody that they have 10 more reps or something like that.
Right. I think what you're doing is pretty special, because I will be like talking to a client and they'll be like, oh yeah, Kat says the same things that you say. And it's like, so you're really, in my opinion, it just seems like you have a very, very in-depth education around the pelvic floor, around the pelvis, and really biomechanically. So I think it's cool, because obviously there's such a lack of prenatal support and prenatal fitness in the area that you just, it's a little bit scary when you have pregnant clients going to just check out a boot camp, or even if it is like a mom fitness class, but it's not specific to like their developing and changing body, and
Yes.
so that's where
Yeah.
I think like the cues are really important. So I've just been delighted hearing all this positive feedback from your courses or from your fitness classes. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, I also feel like sometimes people are like, okay, I'm pregnant, let me go start exercising. But other times people are so worried that they're going to injure themselves by moving their bodies during pregnancy, maybe because they didn't have a movement practice before, or they're just scared about what they can or can't do, that almost paralyzes them into not moving their body. And so one of the things that I love about these classes is I cap them. So they're only 9 people. And I check in with everyone before class for a half an hour. So before they sign up for class, we check in and we just talk about what's going on in their body, so that in the context of class, if I know that an exercise isn't appropriate for someone and they need a different variation, then I can sort of call that out in class. And I have this behind my computer, I have this huge TV. So I have everyone on a big screen. So I can like really get in there and see the nitty gritty of what's going on with their, like pelvic alignment in the middle of their living room with their dog and maybe children bouncing around in the background.
Nice.
It's
Were
fun.
you doing these virtually before the pandemic?
No, I just dove straight in. And actually, I started them doing just general movement classes. And then I only want to work with pregnant people. That's the goal, pregnant and postpartum. That's the goal of my business. And so I've really been able to sort of like taper off I love having other people in my classes as well, but now it's really focused to just this population, because I just feel like there's so much information to share
Yeah, that's
that
lovely.
it doesn't seem people are getting other places.
Cool. So I couldn't help but when I look at your website, how do you manage like you could have a birth client and they're in labor and you have a class?
So because of that, I actually don't do too many births.
Okay.
I have, like, for example, I did one last month and I did one in December. And I just say to my class, people before they sign up, I say, at some point, I'm probably going to have to cancel class. And I pre-record a class. And so like from a birth, I'll be sending an email like, okay, here's the class for today. Sorry that I can't be there. But actually, I don't know, it doesn't feel as much of value as doing a live class. So then I also gave those people who I missed a class for, I gave them a discount for the next month. So I was like, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's so lovely.
But I love doing postpartum doula work because
Okay.
it's a way to still be really intimately involved with a family through this huge shift that's happening, but it's schedulable. So I know when my shifts are, I don't have to cancel on anyone.
Lovely.
So I'll take a birth if it's like, a real strong connection or a close friend. But other than that, I'm pretty much sticking to postpartum work and these movement classes.
Lovely. Thank you for sharing that. So I have a question then. We were doing a series on the podcast called Doula Series, and I was learning about different doulas, birth doulas, postpartum doulas. Do you mind sharing a little bit specifically about your postpartum work and what you maybe specialize in, or how do you help families?
Yeah, I would say that it probably is a little different for every family. Every family has different needs. Sometimes I just do overnight work, and so I'll just help everybody get a little bit more sleep, everybody but me get a little bit more sleep. Um, with other families, like I just worked with this wonderful family, and the mother and I really became close friends. Um, but let's see, I kind of describe myself as a grandmother. Like I just come in and do all the things that grandma would do. Like I, you know, do laundry and do the dishes and make sure that everybody's fed and hold baby while mom takes a nap. I feel like I just sort of do the things that need to get done. And then also just because my background is in movement, I can't help but sort of notice maybe the way that the house is set up. And I'm like, whoa, okay, you are walking way over here to do X, Y, and Z when like maybe we could consolidate these two tasks and put them in the same place. Or I'm watching you every time I'm in your house, lay down your baby with this kind of like funky biomechanics, putting your baby down. And I'm just sort of watching this injury develop, or I'm watching shoulders crunched up by people's ears as they're breastfeeding because they're trying to figure out latch and all these other things. So I feel like sometimes I can help bring people's awareness to their bodies, because lots of times in that really immediate period, it's almost, there is no separation between the person who just birthed and the baby. Those two bodies are like really one. And then there's this moment, that happens, it ranges, but from like 1 month to 6 weeks or something, I see the person who just gave birth like, oh, I have a body. Like, there are things that are going on in here. And so I feel like one thing that just tends to happen in my work with families is that we sort of walk through that path of discovering, like almost rediscovering your independence as a body, and then rediscovering what it means to work in the world with this body that's kind of new, considering the birth you just experienced.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so lucky. I mean, it's really cool to even have that in the home, of course. But a lot of times, not that this is even standard to practice, but this is what we preach should be standard, is that you have a pelvic floor PT evaluation at 6 to 8 weeks postpartum, right?
Oh my gosh.
And
please, everyone.
But a lot of times, you've already have so many patterns that develop, and what birthing person can actually get it together to go to anywhere, within like that 4 to 6 week, 8 week, sometimes longer span. Yeah. And so it's really cool what you're offering, because that's so much more than, that mechanical expertise is so important and could really save the body so much wear and tear, so many compensation patterns that just prolong healing, in the future and as recovery goes.
And I actually, I was attending births. I was a birth doula, and I was working with people prenatally, but then I sort of wouldn't see them until that 6 week mark, or until whenever they reached out to me postpartum. And I realized that there was this gap of time that I was sort of, quote unquote, preparing people for, but I hadn't seen it that much. I don't have children myself, and I have been with friends during that period, but I wasn't focusing on like their body mechanics and stuff like that. So one of the reasons I got trained and practice as a postpartum doula is to get a better understanding of that period, so that even if I'm not in the home, I can prepare people for that prenatally. So some of the things we practice, I'll say in class, you may think that you're not going to do this, but I promise you're going to do this movement. So let's practice it now, and let's load it with an 8-pound weight, because you're probably going to be carrying a baby with you everywhere, so that they already sort of have an understanding of what the demands of the postpartum period will be, even if they haven't experienced them yet.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. It's actually really nice just for me to know too, like, obviously it's actually hard, I think, to find a postpartum doula with availability, especially one that does nights. You might not think so, but like, I have a hard time getting my clients support during that early phase. So it's wonderful to hear. Are you taking new clients?
I am. I am out of town for the month of May, because I will be supporting my sister in her postpartum period, but I'll be back after that. So I am taking new clients, and I actually just moved on March 1st to Edmonds. So
You're in Edmonds?
Brand new. Yeah.
Oh, you have to come to the clinic.
I definitely want to.
Yeah. Come have a coffee there. We're vaccinated. If that makes you feel comfortable. But we'll wear masks too. That's so lovely. So you know the magic of the town that we're in.
Oh my gosh, I'm discovering it. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Oh, that's great. Well, I'm happy to hear. So tell me a little bit, you're talking to me about this postpartum period. And yeah, I'm excited, because I think that's just really, really needed. But tell me, as far as like, let's go back to your exercise classes. Mm-hmm. You have your prenatal classes. And then as far as support postpartum from an exercise class, are the people that are in your prenatal, are those mixed classes?
No, they're only prenatal classes.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So because I just started those, I sort of haven't had the guts to start a postpartum class, but our mutual client just reached out to me and said, like, are you going to do anything postpartum? And so I have this sort of pool of postpartum clients who took my prenatal movement classes and have had their babies and are thinking about moving their body again. So it's definitely maybe summer.
Nice.
I'll add that in. Yeah. So right now it's just prenatal movement classes. And then if I do work with people postpartum, it's one-on-one
Oh, nice.
coaching.
Yeah. Oh, and I mean, that's reasonable. Help
Mm-hmm.
close dice, specific cues for each individual is
Exactly.
lovely.
Exactly. I feel like it's, in a prenatal class, we're all working towards birth and the postpartum period. We have sort of a communal goal, whereas in the postpartum period, everyone sort of has had their own experience, and there's so many nuances to everyone's situation that it just is going to take a lot of preparation to be able to create a class that can suit everyone.
Nice.
Considering their circumstance postpartum.
Absolutely. Tell me about class options. So you do the class, and then do you have, like, if someone can't make your times, because I've looked at your classes, because I'm pregnant too. So I was like, oh, maybe this is what I should do. But what if you can't make the times? Do you like sell your classes as like recordings or how do you
So
do it?
I really like to build community within the class
Definitely.
each month. So I stick to just those people who can attend, like Mondays and Wednesdays at 5:30, Tuesdays and Thursdays at noon. Those are like the two groups. But I record every class, and then I use this app called TrueCoach. And so if someone misses class, I send them the recording via the app that I use. And then also I send everyone the recording, like Tuesday's class, they get on Saturday, and Thursday's class, they get on Sunday. So they could take class 4 times a week if they want to repeat class.
Nice.
It would just be me, saying the exact same words as before. But I think sometimes it's really helpful to get that sort of information again. And there's sort of a progression through the month that happens month over and month over. So people who take my course for 6 months, there's definitely changes that happen through the months, but they do, the very first thing we talk about is breathing. So they know that the first class of every month, we're going to talk about breathing. And I think it's helpful to get that information over and over again, because you kind of think you have it, and then the next month I'll give my little spiel about breathing, and someone will catch something new and be like, oh my gosh, this new thing really resonates. But so I went on a tangent, but the answer to your question is that people get a recording.
Cool. Awesome. And then do you work privately? Do you do private one-on-ones with prenatal too?
Yes. Yeah, that's just some people's
Cool.
preference. Yeah. And so what I really try and do with people is, I just feel in general, like working out or exercising once a week, twice a week, that only does so much. Like ACOG's recommendation is 150 minutes of movement per week. And they specifically say, spread it out through the week. And one of the main things they recommend is walking. So if people are really having trouble finding time for exercise, walking your dog counts towards that 150 minutes. So I really like to try and help people if I'm working with them one-on-one, and in classes too. How can you almost reframe the things that you're doing in life to have them count towards your movement goals, so that exercise doesn't necessarily have to be this thing that's completely separate from the rest of your life? I bet you squat, 15 times a day. And if you have children, then you squat a whole bunch more because you're bending over and picking things up or whatever. So how can it's almost like the only point, exercise is great. There are wonderful things about exercise, but how can we use the time that we spend, quote, exercising, informing the way that we move in our life, so that life becomes exercise? And then you don't have to set aside an hour every day to exercise. And if you don't do that, then you feel bad about yourself. How can movement be infused into your daily life so that it all just sort of like happens together rather than being separated? But another thing that I do with my personal training clients is that, so I work with them once a week, but I just feel like that doesn't do too much. So through this app that I use called TrueCoach, I create a movement program for them. And we sort of talk about it, like, how many times a week do you think you can exercise? Someone will say, I think maybe I can do 15 minutes 3 times a week. perfect. So then I create an exercise program for them that's 15 minutes, sort of working on the things that I know they need to work on. And then there's, you know, a little tick box where they get to say, I completed my workout. And it says, congratulations. So that the time that we spend together isn't the only time that they spend moving through the week. They also get this additional 45 minutes or whatever we build into their schedule out of that 55-minute session that they paid for.
Yeah. Awesome. That's really cool. I can't help but love what you said about just introducing that movement into your daily patterns, because not only is it then exercise in your daily life, but it's like saving your body in your daily life when you're,
Totally.
you know, not bending. I'm looking at my laundry dryer right now that I'm like, I need to unload. And the other day I'm like, I haven't worked out in like a few days, and I'm just like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to feel my butt when I do this, you know, just like squat down,
Totally.
like get your butt firing, have your butt do all the work, you know? And it's like, okay, that counts. you know?
Yeah. Or, you know, you're standing in line at the grocery store, stand on one leg and, you know, organize your lateral hip muscles. Totally. And it's almost like if in a movement exercise class context, you can see how the movement in class relates to the movement outside of class, then everything becomes one. Everything becomes a movement practice because you're just more aware of your body. It's that awareness first, and then you can make changes once you're aware of what you're actually doing with your body. So like one of the things I'll have people do is sometimes I give homework in my prenatal movement class, and I'll say, from now until next class, I want you to count how many times you squat. And it's not like, you know, someone's doing squat reps. It's how many times do you squat in your life? Mm-hmm. And then if you just notice like, okay, well, maybe I could bring a little bit more awareness to this, and you'd have some nice, beautiful squats, however many times a day.
Awesome. Okay. Do you mind, we're shifting topics? I want to know more about your childbirth education, what you preach, what you feel helps, what is your childbirth education about? And really, how is it different than, say, if you go to a hospital, you know, and you go to their education courses?
So I used to teach through a nonprofit when we were doing in-person training, and they had a curriculum that I used in a 6-week course. Because transitioning to online for a whole 6-week childbirth education course just sort of wasn't feasible for me during this time, I switched to just doing one-on-one childbirth education classes. And I do have to say, I think group childbirth education classes are the way to go ultimately, because I've seen wonderful connections be made in a group setting in childbirth classes. So if someone comes to me, I generally send them to like some of my favorite childbirth educators, like Sharon Muja. But for example, a postpartum family, I'm working with them as a postpartum doula. They just had a few questions about breastfeeding and newborn care, and they were getting some birth education somewhere else. So I just did a little one-on-one with them. So that's kind of the extent of how I'm using childbirth education in my business now. Wow. But as you mentioned before, I have some online courses. Yes. One is called Mobility for Labor, and it's free. It's like 45 minutes or something, and it comes with some recorded videos that you can practice afterwards. But that's actually the first section of a longer full course that's called Movement for Labor. And the main things that I talk about in birth preparation in that course are mobility around the pelvis. Then whenever you have mobility, of course, you need stability, so strengthening around the pelvis. And then the last component I call response ability for labor. So it's a practice in listening to what your body has to say, sort of like quieting the mind and tuning in and listening to what your body has to say, and then using the information that your body shares with you to inform how you move your body. And so I actually use the last 5-ish minutes of my prenatal movement class to practice this every day from every class. And my intention behind that concept is that there are so many things that are being told to you about your birth experience. You're going to birth in this position. Maybe this position might help. This position might help. And so there are all these positions that like you think you're kind of supposed to do in your birth process. But And those positions are probably super valuable, but also there's a lot of knowledge in your body, I feel, if you're able to listen. And lots of times I think we're caught up with like, checking your phone and our email inbox and all these other things grab our attention. And so our brain stops hearing what our body has to say. And so just slowing down and listening, like, you know what? There's actually something kind of funky happening in the back of my right hip. And I'm not sure what it is, but I'm just going to like sit here and hear what it has to say. And then maybe I'm going to, bend over to the side and see how it feels when I do this. So you just start to move with a little curiosity. And then as you move your body, you probably gather more information. And that sort of slowing down and listening can really be valuable for labor, because that can inform how you move your body in your birth experience.
Oh, I love that.
So there's like a whole course.
Awesome. What's the name of that course?
Movement for Labor.
Movement for Labor. Okay. And people can find that on your website?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. We'll link your website to the show notes too, so people can find that there. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything else that you want to share with me or that you think people should know about you?
The only thing I want to share is that on April 24th, I have a Prep Your Push workshop where, this is kind of ironic that I'm saying this, but we talk about positions you could potentially push your baby out in. But we also talk about the coordination that it takes to push your baby out. And so I know that you have a lot of information on that, but I have an 1.5-hour workshop that's for birthing people and their partners. And we go over like ways that your partner can support you and stuff like that. So it's a super fun workshop.
So important. And I just don't think that there's enough of it, to be honest. And when people can't feel it or can't figure it out, it's so good to know beforehand, and can seriously, I think, it reduce the impact of C-sections that people are having. So,
or damage to the pelvic floor,
100%. Yeah. So anyone in that class that can't feel it, send them our way.
Send them your way.
But no, that's great. Everyone should take that class. That's seriously, absolutely invaluable. So, well, thank you so much for sharing all this good stuff. And I'm excited to finally connect with you. I feel like it's been a long time that I've wanted to connect with you. And it's like, but please, let's make a date at the office if you want to come check it out. And
awesome.
Love to have you down there. So
great.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
The Edmonds Moms Room podcast is brought to you by Body Motion Physical Therapy. We help women through pregnancy and beyond so they can live active, confident, and healthy lives.